There are moments in motherhood where you lose your patience with your child and you know almost immediately that the reaction was bigger than the situation. Your child asks you the same question for the fourth time. They interrupt you while you're trying to finish something. They spill something. They simply need you. And suddenly you're angry. Not irritated, not mildly frustrated. Angry. Your voice changes, posture changes, your body gets hot, your jaw tightens, and that knot in between the back of your shoulders is on fire too. You say something sharper than you meant to. Maybe you yell, maybe you become cold and withhold affection. Maybe you simply walk away. And then later, you're sitting there thinking, why did I just do that? Because sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes you weren't actually that angry at your child, if at all. You were angry at your partner, your spouse, your husband. You just didn't know it yet. And by the time you figured it out, your child had already been standing in the splash zone. So that's what we're talking about today. Not how to justify yelling at your children, not how to blame your partner either for your parenting, and definitely not how to turn every difficult parenting moment into, well, my husband made me do it. No, we're going somewhere much more useful. We're going to talk about what happens when resentment has been accumulating quietly inside of you. You haven't fully acknowledged it, you haven't communicated it, and your child becomes a person who happens to ask for something at exactly the wrong moment. Because children are remarkably talented at arriving precisely when our nervous systems have already filed for bankruptcy. And I know this one personally. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Grounded and in Full Color, a neurodivergent mom's studio for motherhood, overstimulation, and building a life that actually fits your brain. I'm your host, Princess Ebony, who experiences autism and an ADHD brain as a mom of 3 and your favorite neurodivergent big sister on the internet. One of the hardest things for me to recognize has been the difference between I'm angry about what is happening right now and something has been building for a while and this moment just gave it somewhere to go. Those are not the same things. Sometimes the immediate trigger is completely legitimate. My child really is interrupting me. The house really is loud. Someone really does need something. I am really tired. There really are dishes all over the sink. There really is another load of laundry or scrap piece of clothing I forgot to fold and put away. And there really is another decision to make or 4. But sometimes the intensity of my reaction doesn't belong entirely to that moment. The moment is just the match. The gasoline was already there, and that gasoline can be resentment. It can be disappointment. It can be loneliness. It can be feeling like I'm carrying something I thought we were supposed to be carrying together, honey. It can be feeling like I've asked for something several times or have had to remind you just as many times like I was talking to a blank wall. It can be feeling like my needs keep getting pushed further and further and further down the list. It can be feeling unseen, which is an special type of sting when I get jabbed with it. It can be feeling like I'm managing the household instead of actually sharing a life with someone, doing life together. And sometimes it can be something much less dramatic. I wanted help. I didn't ask clearly. I expected him to notice, and he didn't. I interpreted that as him not caring, and I also didn't bring it up. And now 3 days later, I'm furious because he asked me what we're having for dinner. That's the kind of ridiculous little psychological Rube Goldberg machine I'm talking about. One thing happens. We interpret it. We don't address the interpretation. We keep moving. Another thing happens, and we add it to the pile. And eventually our child or children ask us something very simple as where their shoes are, and suddenly we're acting like they personally orchestrated the collapse of civilization. They didn't, by the way. They just needed their shoes. This is where I want to be very careful, because recognizing that your anger may be connected to your relationship does not mean your child deserves less accountability, definitely not, less patience, or less protection. Your children are not your emotional punching bags, honey. They're not your therapist either. There are just some things to get off your chest that are inappropriate to land on another, especially if they're under the age of 8 or like 12 or 13. You catch my drift. And they're also not responsible for repairing your marriage either. And they're certainly not responsible for whatever you haven't communicated to your partner, yourself. That one is squarely on you. But your children can become the place where your most unprocessed emotions tend to leak out. Especially because children require so much of us. Yes, they do interrupt. They ask, they touch, they cry. They need help. They need food, they need affection, and they need co-emotional regulation. They need us to regulate them while we are also trying to responsibly regulate ourselves as adults. And sometimes they are simply the person who happens to be physically closer to us when we've reached our limit. But that's no excuse. It doesn't make our behavior, okay. But understanding the mechanism gives us something incredibly valuable. And right here is what I want to point out. The first time I ever heard the conversation around forgiveness and acceptance, one or the other. And I believe I heard it from Shaman Durek. He said that forgiveness is labeling one party or the other as good or bad, like there's a pro and an antagonist. But acceptance, both parties, all people involved can move past it, and you can work with it, and you're not trying to move past a current version of reality that only happens on your side of this story that you have made up or co-created in the moment with someone. So I definitely get this. It's understanding and not just blindly, I guess, labeling people, because self-labeling is valid. And if someone doesn't adhere to one box or another, who are we to put them in the first place? But the place we do need to be working on is a place of intervention. Because if we only tell ourselves, I need to stop yelling at the kids, we may be only addressing the problem 5% of the time. But what if the question is also, what have I been carrying all week that I believe I've been carrying by myself? Now, I think resentment can be sneaky because it doesn't always feel like anger at first. Sometimes it feels like, fine, it's okay, don't worry about it, I've got it. Whatever is easiest for you, or I'll just do it myself, whatever. Again, it's not that big a deal. You can just let it go. It's not worth arguing about. All of that and more. And maybe in those moments, we genuinely don't want to argue. We don't want to put up a fight, so we don't. But that doesn't necessarily mean that our emotion has disappeared. It's messenger and was trying to communicate something. And what happens when you send an email and it doesn't get sent? It gets returned back to sender. And sometimes it just goes underground. And now you've got this weird emotional savings account that you're depositing into every time you don't say what you actually mean. Except it's not earning interest. It's accruing rage. So you tell yourself you're being mature, you're keeping the peace, you're choosing your battles. Oh, that's a nice one. You're giving yourself time to process. And sometimes you are. But sometimes you're simply avoiding the discomfort of saying, I actually need you to do this. Or that hurt me. Or I do not agree with that. Or I need more help than I'm getting here. Or I don't want to be responsible for this anymore. Be honest, and you can say that. Because particularly with me, doesn't mean that I'm always going to get what I want. But I can control my part of the communication, especially when it breaks down. And I had a role to play in that. It's being honest. And sometimes it literally is. I would like the luxury of being lazy, so I don't want to deal with this anymore. Or even, I thought we agreed on something different. Again, communication here. And the longer you don't say it, whatever it is that's leaking from your chest, the more emotional weight the next interaction carries, and the next, and the next. So your partner can say something completely ordinary. Your child may interrupt, as they do. Someone leaves a single sock in the middle of the living room floor. And suddenly you're reacting to the entire archive, not the sock, not the question, not the interruption, the archive. Motherhood makes this particularly complicated because there's almost no clean separation between your emotional life and your physical environment. You're living inside the same house, you're sharing schedules, you're sharing money, you're sharing children, you're sharing responsibilities and decisions, and you're doing all of this while somebody is probably asking you for a snack or a mango. There isn't always a convenient time to say, honey, I'd like to schedule a 90-minute emotional processing session about our division of household labor. Someone has to poop, or you have to wipe a butt. Someone needs a bath. Someone can't find their favorite cup. Your baby is crying. Dinner still needs to happen, and life keeps happening. So sometimes couples don't actually resolve things. They just resume functioning. Living like roommates, have you heard that? And functioning can look deceptively similar to being okay. You can make dinner, watch TV together, you can sleep in the same bed, have great sex, you can laugh, you can have a perfectly normal Tuesday evening, and still have something unresolved underneath it all. That's one of the reasons I think it is so important to pay attention to disproportionate reactions to things. Not because every big reaction means there's some deep marital crisis hiding underneath it. Sometimes you're just tired. Sometimes your kid really is behaving annoyingly. Sometimes the human nervous system is a badly designed appliance. But then you notice a pattern. Why does this particular thing make me absolutely furious? That is worth investigating.
For me, one of the biggest clues is the feeling that happens before the words. My body starts changing. My head gets hot, my shoulders tighten, my jaw gets tense, my heart starts pounding, and my thoughts get faster and faster. And then I can feel myself moving toward that place where everything suddenly becomes evidence. Evidence that I am failing. Evidence that nobody listens to me. Nobody understands me. Evidence that I made the wrong choices in my life that have landed me here in this moment. Evidence that I should have done something differently. Anything. Evidence that I don't have enough support and never will. Evidence that I'm trapped and I can never overcome my limitations. And this is where I have to interrupt the story, y'all. Because once I'm there, I'm no longer dealing with the actual event. I'm in my head. I'm in a fantasy. I'm in a story I made up. I'm dealing with the emotional courtroom that my brain has immediately constructed and built up around it. And everybody is guilty, including the toddler, especially the toddler. The toddler has no idea what's even happening. They're just being themselves, standing there holding a banana or a mango or my wallet. And I have to now relocate again my library card. I don't think the answer is to become perfectly regulated, by no means. That is not a real human being. The goal is to catch the pattern earlier and earlier, even a moment, a second earlier. For me, that means asking 3 questions. What am I actually angry about? Not, why is everyone bothering me? What am I actually angry about? What is happening? What did I expect to happen? What didn't happen? What did I actually need versus want? What did I leave unsaid? And perhaps most importantly, who am I actually angry with? Because sometimes the answer really is my child. And sometimes the answer is my husband. And sometimes it is myself. And again, sometimes it's a situation that nobody caused. Those are different problems. They require different responses. The last question is, what belongs to my marriage? If I'm angry because I feel unsupported by my partner, my husband, that is a relationship conversation. It doesn't belong on any child's shoulders. And if I'm angry because I feel like we're not communicating clearly, that's a relationship conversation to be had with my husband. If I'm angry because we've made an agreement and are not following through on it, relationship conversation again. Now, if I'm angry because I'm carrying responsibilities I don't want to carry any longer, relationship conversation. My child does not need to become the courtroom where I prosecute my husband. That's my responsibility. And honestly, sometimes that means I have to have the uncomfortable conversation before I feel ready. That has been the challenge of the past 12 plus months, is doing something regardless of how I feel, especially before I feel ready. Now, what belongs to my child? This is where we separate the actual parenting issue from everything else. Maybe my child really did hit their sibling. Maybe they really did ignore me. Maybe they really did dump every toy they own onto the floor or pull every book off the bookshelf in search of the one after I asked them gently not to do it that way and to please trust my way. That's still something we can address. But I can address the behavior without attaching every unresolved frustration in my life up until that moment to it. I can say, please don't do that, without saying, you're making my life impossible. I can kindly say, please stop, without turning it into, nobody ever listens to me. Those are very different messages and meanings attached to them. And then there are the moments where I don't catch it, because sometimes I won't. Sometimes I will realize afterward that was not fair. And I think this is where repair becomes incredibly important. Not the dramatic, performative kind, just I yelled at you and that wasn't okay. You didn't cause the feelings I was carrying. I was overwhelmed and I took it out on you. I apologize, baby. And then, when appropriate, let's try that again. Because repair teaches our children something enormously important. Relationships can survive mistakes. We can take responsibility. We can tell the truth. We can change our behavior. We don't have to pretend nothing happened, and we don't have to collapse into shame and the guilt. Self-appointed, either. There's another piece here that I think matters enormously. Sometimes you have to tell your partner what's happening before you reach the explosion. Catch the pattern? Not, you never help me. Not, you don't care about me. Not, I do everything around here. Even when those are the words your flooded brain desperately wants to use. Instead, hey, I'm noticing that I'm getting really resentful and I don't want that resentment to spill out onto the kids. That's a completely different conversation. Or, I think I'm more angry than I realize and I need us to talk about what's underneath it. May you please help me? Or, I'm noticing that I'm becoming really short with the children when I actually think I'm carrying frustration about something that's going on between us. That may be an eye-opener because, again, all of this is happening internally within us and they have no clue. Like the bodies we carry in this dimension of reality on this trip around the sun that we incarnated, in, through, and on, we don't have the receptors to pick up on people's energies like that unless it's an intentional practice. I don't know, agree with me or not. But it goes to say that they can't read our minds. They can't just pick up on our energies all the time. You have to be open and honest and present it in a way that doesn't make them want to put their guard up and makes them want to run away or get defensive. And then they're doing the same things to the children that you were doing. And then the child really doesn't catch break. Oh my goodness. But these alternative messages, this way of language, it gives your partner information. They may not have the receptors to pick up on it externally, so you can just offer it to them, share it. And it also gives you information. You're no longer pretending that you are fine, and you're no longer waiting until you're furious enough that the only available communication style is emotional flamethrower. So here's what I want you to try the next time you feel yourself suddenly becoming furious with your child. Before you decide what the moment means, pause and ask, what happened? What am I feeling? What else have I been carrying? And then, is this actually about my child? You don't have to solve your marriage in that moment. You don't have to psychoanalyze yourself. You do not have to become a regulation goddess floating 6 inches off the kitchen floor. You just create enough space to notice, wait, there's more to this right here. That tiny moment of recognition can change what happens next. Maybe you take 5 minutes. Maybe you apologize. Maybe you tell your partner, we need to talk later. Maybe you write down what you're actually angry about so you don't lose the thread. Maybe you simply decide, I'm not going to make my child carry this. That's enough for today. I don't want to become a mother who never gets angry. That's not realistic. I don't want to become a wife who never feels resentment. Again, also not realistic. I want to become someone who can recognize what belongs here. Or rather, I am becoming. It's a practice. My child's behavior belongs in the parenting conversation, yes. My marital resentment belongs in our marriage conversation. My old wounds belong in my own healing work. And my exhaustion may require rest. My unmet needs may require asking for something, Ebony. And sometimes the entire system needs to change. Because not every emotional problem is a mindset problem. Sometimes the structure really isn't working. Sometimes you really do need more help. Sometimes the division of labor needs to change. Sometimes you need more time alone. And sometimes you need clearer and cleaner agreements. Sometimes you need to stop pretending that something is sustainable simply because you've managed to survive it up until this point. And that's an important distinction. You can be responsible for your reactions without being responsible for creating every condition that made you overwhelmed in the first place. Both things can be true. I can't take responsibility for yelling at my child. And I can also ask why I was so depleted that a normal Tuesday evening pushed me over the edge. I can repair with my child, and I can have a difficult conversation with my husband. I can work on myself too, and I can ask for the environment around me to change through the language that my hands and feet speak, actually getting up and doing it. That's not blame. That is systems thinking, my playground. And frankly, motherhood could use more of it. So if you've ever looked at your children after snapping at them and thought, oh, where on earth did that come from? Maybe don't stop at the guilt. Get curious. There may be something underneath it all, something you haven't said, something you've been carrying, something you need, something in your relationship that needs attention. And maybe the most loving thing you can do for your child isn't simply learning how to control your anger. It's part of the equation. Maybe it's also learning how to listen to what your anger has been trying to tell you before your child ends up hearing it. You're not a bad mother because you're angry. You are a human being. But your anger is information. It's messenger. And you get to decide what you want to do with it. And until then, I'll see you in the next one.